Hello children, I'm Proshinjit sir and I'm just going to teach you chapter number 7 today. Economy and Society 6th century BC to the first half of the 7th century AD. Hope you all have got the history syllabus. Still, I'm just going to tell you the history syllabus once again. The syllabus will be chapter number 3, Ancient History of the Indian Subcontinent, first phase 7000 to 1500 BC. Next, chapter 4, Ancient History of the Indian Subcontinent, second phase 1500 to 600 BC. Next, chapter 5, Indian Subcontinent in the 6th century BC, Evolution of State System and Religion, North India. And the last chapter will be Economy and Society, 6th century BC to the first half of the 7th century AD. First of all, children, I'm just asking the apology from all of you as because I could not just upload the videos, as in my internet connection was interrupted. For that reason I could not just upload my videos. I could not able to just upload my videos. Okay, now I'm just back with a new video, and today we'll discuss chapter number 7, Economy and Society, 6th century BC to the first half of the 7th century AD. Before starting the chapter, children, you must know that when you had first started to read about history, I mean, as far I know, it was in class 3 you first started to just learn about history, if I'm not wrong. So since that time, children, you have just read about few persons or the personalities, those who were very much famous, who not were famous, still they are very famous all over the world. Just for instance or example, in Indian history, the ancient kings like Samudragupta, Chandragupta, Harshavardhana, and so on. And if you have just read about the European history, you have come to know the first president of the independent America, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and so on. Children, have you ever wondered that apart from the kings, queens, emperor, empress, and their empire, the common peoples, they also just exist in the country, inside a society? Sometimes we do forget to tell anything about them. History every time doesn't tell everything about the common people, but you are just now growing up. So that's why, children, you must know that history is the evolution of human society as well as history is not now only the story of the past events to just memorize the lifeless vocabulary. No, history does not just emphasize on these things only. Apart from that, history is also an evolution of the human society, how the humans, they had started living on this planet, on this earth. What were the main obstructions, hindrances, or the problems during that time they had faced severely, and how did they overcome all these hindrances or the obstructions? It means history is a subject from where you can come to know about the common people too. Exactly, children. History is also about the common people. History must reveal or expose the fact about the common peoples. Why so? I'm just giving you a very small example from where the idea will be very clear to you. Children, the dynasty, different types of dynasties that have been just formed in different time, in different part of the world. The dynasties, when it had just emerged, suppose for an example, I'm saying that the Mauryan dynasty. The Mauryan dynasty that was founded by Chandragupta Maurya. So we know that the Mauryan dynasty was very famous all over the country in India, but still the dynasty was collapsed. Before the foundation or the emergence of the Mauryan dynasty, Nanda dynasty was there. Mahapadmananda, he was the founder of the Nanda dynasty, and the last ruler of the Nanda dynasty, he was Dhanananda, as because he was very cruel to his subjects. So that's why Dhanananda, finally he was defeated by Chandragupta Maurya, and hence the foundation of Mauryan dynasty becomes successful. So in the society, in a particular geographical area, in a particular country, apart from the kings, queens, and the emperor, empress, the common peoples, they also do exist, and we should be very much concerned about those peoples, as because they are the real assets for the country. So now you see your book, see the name of the chapter, Economy and Society. In different times, the different dynasties were just formed, and after a certain period all the dynasties declined, collapsed, but still the human civilization is just going on so smoothly. Yes or no? I think it will be yes. Surely children, as because the dynasties, they will just come, they will fall down, they will just fall down, but finally the human civilization, the human beings or the common peoples, they will just continue their work on, isn't it? So that's why economy is very important, and who are the main who can play a very active role for the promotion of the economic development of a particular country. Obviously, we the common people, we play a very vital role for the development of a country, most importantly in the economic field. Now on this context, we are just going to learn about age of 16 Mahajanapadas, 6th century BC to 4th century BC. This is from page number 99. Listen children very carefully. When I will teach this chapter, I will definitely tell you that which did you knows you have to just read, and which did you knows you don't need to just read. And hopefully by tomorrow or by the day after tomorrow, I will definitely upload all the questions, as well as I will also mark the answers from your book. So don't need to just get worried about that. You will definitely get the questions, all questions, 2 marks and 4 marks questions from your book. Okay. So in the age of the Mahajanapadas, the society and economy of the Indian subcontinent also registered a change. So what kind of change it was? If you see that when the 16 Mahajanapadas were there, and the 16 Mahajanapadas, when the Mahajanapadas were emerged, during that time sensitive point that was there, and that was all the Mahajanapadas, most of the Mahajanapadas, not all the Mahajanapadas, most of the Mahajanapadas had emerged in the bank of the river. In the bank of the river, especially in the Gangetic Valley. Why so? As because beside the river, as because the resources for maintaining the royal officers and the soldiers came from agriculture. So that's why most of the Mahajanapadas located in the Gangetic Valley, the rivers were really dry and rainfall was sufficient most of the times. So therefore the soil was very fertile and that was suitable for the cultivation. So cultivation or the agriculture was the main economic backbone of the people during the ancient time, during this period. Exactly what I'm just saying about 6th century BC to the 4th century BC. So agriculture was the mainstream. Agriculture was the main economic backbone of the people during that time, as because from the agricultural field, the king, they used to just collect the revenue or the taxes from the common people, and what about the expenditure on them, that was also collected from there. To run a government, lots of expenses are there, and even today also we pay the taxes to the government, and indirectly the taxes are being just utilized for the welfare of the common people. This was also happened during the ancient period. Agriculture was the main occupation of that age. Various descriptions of the cultivation are found in contemporary text. Now you will see that different kinds of crops were sown in the different seasons. So what kind of crops were just sown during that time? Let's have a look. Obviously paddy was the most important crop, and shali was the best quality crop or the paddy during that time. So only paddy was cultivated during that time? No, apart from paddy, it was mostly cultivated in the Magadha region. I mean that quality paddy, shali, that was just cultivated in the Magadha region. Apart from this paddy, wheat, barley and sugarcane were also cultivated. Okay, so a small section of people enjoyed rights over large tracts of lands. Besides them, there were the landless cultivators. So the division was also very much common during that time, as because few peoples were there, those were very much rich, were just called the cultivators or the farmers or the peasants, riots, anything you can just call, but still they were very much rich and wealthy. Why so? As because they were having lots of lands in their hands, and simultaneously few peoples or cultivators were there. Those who did not have a piece of land, they were the tenants. They had to just take the land as a debt. They used to just take the debt from others. They used to just cultivate the lands on behalf of the landlords. So a sharp division was made on the basis of the land owning system. Few cultivators were there, those who were very much rich and wealthy, and few peoples were there, few farmers were there. They're having very least amount of lands with them, or else they did not have a piece of land, so they were very poor at that time. But both, they had to just provide the taxes or the revenue to the emperor. Now cattle was needed for the cultivation, therefore there was a decrease in the number of cattle sacrifices after 5th century BC. You know, children, that according to the Hindu religion, cattle sacrifice was very common, especially during the time of yajna or yagna. So after 5th century BC, the sacrifice of animals got reduced. The emperors and empress, means the kings, they got very much they become very much concerned about that. They sort to think that if the cattle sacrifice it just continues na, at the time what can be happened, there will be the curse of the cattle, and during that time no tractor, no equipment was available for what they could just continue their cultivation on the land. So that's why cattle was the one of the most important thing for them. So that's why sacrifice of cattle got reduced. It was clearly stated, especially from the Gupta emperor. A significant proclamation just was issued by them that the sacrifice of animals should be reduced. And the Brahmins and the Purohits during that time, the priestly class, they also got very much concerned about that. And the yajna or the yagna, that was continued, but still the sacrifice of animals got reduced. Now the descriptions of various crafts and other occupations of this period are also available. Archaeologists have also discovered articles made of iron belonging to those times. So what kind of things were just introduced during that time? What that were just introduced during that time, most of these were the weapons of war, such as choppers, axes, and blades or plows have also been found from their sites or the places. From there we can see that the war equipments were very much essential for the people during that time. They had to just protect themselves from another Mahajanapada. You know that means amongst all the 16 Mahajanapadas, they had to fight, they had to just quarrel with one another every time. So that's why they had just strengthened up for making their equipments and tools very strong. So that's why iron played a very vital role for making all those war equipments. Okay, this helped in expanding cultivable lands and settlements. The Mahajanapadas used weapons made of iron. So during that time, iron was a very common metal for them. In the middle Ganga valleys, iron mines were found in a number of areas. Agricultural tools made of iron were used in South India. However, plows with iron blades were not in use in South India at the time. Varanasi was very famous as a center of weaving. The art of making jewelry was also prominent. Various precious and semi-precious stones and blades were also used for making jewelry. So that was also very much important during that time. So when we have just come to know, we have just got a concept about the jewelry. From there we can predict that the economic condition of the Mahajanapadas during that time in different provinces, that was quite high, as because people, they used to just wear the jewelries. And when do the peoples generally wear the jewelries? When they become very rich, wealthy, isn't it? So that's why the economic condition or the situation of the common people during the ancient time, the period since the 6th century BC to the 4th century BC, this time during this period, the economic condition of the common people was not so much inferior. It was superior, it was good at the time. Okay, along with agricultural and animal husbandry, trade and commerce was yet another important occupation. So all the peoples were they related or associated with the agriculture or the cultivation only? No, as because mining became very common during that time. Lots of metals had been just introduced or discovered during that time, so many peoples were there. They had involved themselves with different kinds of arts and crafts. Animal husbandry was also there. During this time there was improvement in commerce. This is corroborated by increase in the circulation of coins. Apart from wealthy merchants, there were small traders and shopkeepers too. Some merchants used to just travel far for commercial purposes. I mean, few peoples were there, or merchants were there. Those who became very much benefited, those who were very much benefited by conducting the commerce and trade. They used to just go far away from Indian subcontinent. They used to just export goods from one place to distant places, and they could also just carry out important metals, spices and different type of things in Indian subcontinent also. So export and import system was also very much common since the ancient time. You know it very well, children. And most of the time at the initial phase, at the initial time, in the beginning, the trade was just conducted on the waterway services. Okay. So in North India it was easier to carry on commerce through land route and water channels. Sea voyages were comparatively lesser in number. So previously sea voyage was very much important, especially for North India, but later on when wheel was just introduced, since that time the peoples were not only now dependent on the sea voyage. Apart from the sea voyage, they also became dependent on the street or the roadside also. Means the waterway, apart from the waterway transport system, land transport system also played a vital role for conducting the trade and commerce. Jainism and Buddhism had sanctioned the giving and receiving of loan. What was the loan and what was the debt? You must know the relationship between that. Suppose I want to just start a business and I'm not having liquid cash with me right now. So should I just leave the idea? No. If I can just go to the bank, if I can just tell them the novel idea that I have just persuaded, bank will just provide me the money, means the principal amount. Suppose I have just asked to a bank for 1 lakh rupees, the bank will definitely provide me 1 lakh rupees, but they will take interest. The interest rate it was very much minimal during that time, so it became very much convenient for the peoples, especially for the traders, those who were became very much enthusiastic in doing trade and commerce. So they could easily go to the bank. No, during that time no bank was available na. So that's why the emperor himself, he could just provide the loan. Otherwise different guilds were there na. You know about the guilds, Shreni, Shreshti, Gon, and they could just provide the money or a debt to the common people or the traders, and later on they had to just pay the taxes with interest. And Jainism and Buddhism, both they had sanctioned to just take the debt from anyone, from any person, but still they had also recommended that if you have taken the loan from any person or any organization, that should be just paid, that should be paid honestly. Okay. A common form of currency was Karshapan during that time. Now I'm just going to discuss about the urbanization, the first urbanization. In the history of the ancient India, the first city had been seen in the Harappan civilization. So children, don't just forget, the question may be important for your short question also. The question may come just like fill in the blanks, that in the history of the ancient India, the first city had been seen in the dash civilization. The answer will be the Harappan civilization. Therefore, that is known the first urbanization. So the first urbanization, it was constituted in the Harappan civilization. After almost 1,000 years, evidence of the rise of towns and cities can be found. This urbanization happened in North India, mainly in the Gangetic Valley. The urbanization that had taken place in 600 BC is known as the second urbanization. So the first urbanization that was based on the Harappan civilization and the urbanization that had been taken place in 600 BC is known as the second urbanization. You must remember that. And clear distinctions are found between towns and villages in contemporary writings. Capitals of most of the Mahajanapadas were famous cities. The cities used to be surrounded by walls of stone, earth or brick. Now the cities were larger in size than the rural settlements. You know it very well, children, that the cities, the size and the population of cities are much than that of the rural areas. So there was a clear distinction or the differentiation between the cities and the villages. Okay, many people associated with the administration and commerce used to live in the cities. None produced their own food. So this is the difference, children. I'm just going to repeat once again that the peoples of villages or the rural areas, they become successful to just produce their own food, as because they could produce their food by yielding different types of crops in different times and different season. And whereas we could see that the peoples who used to live in the urban areas, they could not just able to produce their own food, and for that reason they became absolutely dependent on the peoples who used to live in the villages. And the village peoples, they were also become benefited by getting different type of administrative policies and the systems that was provided by the urban peoples at the time. So this is the relation, interdependence relation that was there. The villages and the cities were interdependent to one another. Therefore, a steady supply of food for the urban people had to be ensured from the villages. The cities developed near rural settlements. Evidence of a number of new occupations can also be found in the newly growing cities. In North India, during this period, the occupations of a different type of occupations had been just flourished at the time, had been just emerged during that time. What kind of occupations were there? Let me tell you. Washerman, barber and physician were widely known. Now here I'm just going to tell you about the most important thing, that what was the position of women during that time, what was the outlook of and what was the perspective of the common people during that time towards the position of women. Let's have a look. Within the family and society, the place of women was lower than that of the men. As you may know, children, that in the later Vedic period, or in the later Vedic age that was constituted since 1000 BC to 600 BC, during this period the status of the women was lower in the society. Educational opportunities for women had diminished over time. There was an increasing trend in society to marry of girls at a very young age. So we can say that early marriage was very common during that time. Means getting married for a woman or for a girl, not a woman, obviously a girl with another, this was very common. So early marriage got definition during that time in the society, though it should not be continued, this should not be entertained in our society right now, but still during that time early marriage was very common. There was not good. However, Buddhism had a more liberal outlook towards women than Brahmanism. So the Brahmanism, what did they just think about the women? That was quite inferior. Means whereas the Brahmins, that religion, the Buddhism, they had a very liberal outlook. What they had just propagated, what they had just told about the women, that was much more better than that of the Brahmanism. And for that reason, children, you know it very well that this is the only way, this is the only reason or the cause for what the common peoples during that time, they became very much enthusiastic to just grab these new religious ideas or the doctrines, Buddhism. So that's why Buddhism had spread all over the country, even outside of the country also. Even at present time also, if you just visit China, Nepal, Bhutan, there are so many people there, the worshippers of Lord Buddha. Okay, so for today up to this, children, by my next video, by my next class, I will definitely discuss about Mauryan age, second half of the 4th century BC to the first half of the 2nd century BC. Till then, keep yourself safe, stay at your home and stay safe, and don't just forget, children, what I've said, as because hopefully by tomorrow I will definitely upload the questions, as well as I will also mark the answers from your book, and that will be uploaded soon. So don't need to just get worried about that. We're having time with us, as because the chapters are not so vast, and only 4 chapters have been just given for your annual examination. So keep learning with me. Stay safe, stay home. Bye bye, children.